This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with Cardiff Blues forwards coach Tom Smith. A former Ospreys player in his own right, Tom discusses the importance of player profiling, how to periodise a player's week for performance at the weekend, and what separates the good players from the elite. As always, please help to be part of the growth of this podcast by sharing with friends and family. I hope you enjoy. So listen, Tom, thank you very much for giving up some of your Wednesday morning. I guess first, the most important thing, how are things? How are the kids? How are the family, etc.?
Yeah, all good. I suppose we're coping with lockdown as best we can, the same as everyone else. But luckily that we've been all healthy. All our families have been healthy so far, and hopefully that continues. And everyone, we get these vaccines rolled out, and we hopefully can get back to normal as quickly as possible.
And get some people back into stadiums would be nice as well. I'd imagine that's been the difference for you guys.
It's funny how quickly you adapt and things become the norm. First couple of games we played back in September, I think it was. It was very strange, playing in empty stadiums, empty grounds, and you can hear, it's a bit more intimate because you can hear the noise from the pitch as much, but you don't get that emotional connection with the game, I suppose, with the crowds. Pros and cons to that, because I think you can. Initially, I found that you could probably keep your emotions in check a little bit more. You didn't get dragged into the emotional reactions from the crowd, so you could probably it's a bit more clinical. You're just looking at the game itself. But obviously, everyone wants to get into rugby and plays rugby and stays in and coaches rugby because it's an emotional game and we have an emotional attachment to it. So we all look forward to getting crowds back in because that's why we love the sport.
Has there been any kind of changes by the fact that you can hear what the other team is saying as well? Do you think that's made players more alert to what's going on around them?
Possibly. I remember, as a player and coaching, the times where you'd be saying, there's going to be a lot of noise, so you may have to change your calling structures, your calling processes, because verbal cues can't necessarily be heard. You can pretty much pick up everything that the players are saying now. So sometimes in analysis as well, you can pick up calls and you can hear it on the ref mics on the audio. So there's a little bit of a difference there, because you can start to use those verbal cues and those auditory cues, which normally you can't hear or you can't really decipher in your analysis. So there's a little bit in that. I suppose you'd have to ask the players, and asking them, I think sometimes they're such in the heat of the battle, you can't really take in all your stimuluses. So there are elements of that where the crowd noise being down helps in terms of communication, but it could also help the opposition as well, picking up on your calls and your triggers and things like that. So, but again, people, you adapt so quickly. The first couple of games were very strange, and then now it just seems to have become the norm again. So you turn up and you're not expecting the crowd, and it's just become normal. It's very quickly how, obviously, humans are very adaptable, aren't they? And we can adapt and we can evolve pretty quickly, and it's strange how things just become normal again. So it'd be strange going back. It'd be strange to go back to crowds and the emotional attachment, but that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be playing.
Yeah, I think it will be a good day for everyone when you get back to that normality, and even if it is getting a bit of stick away from the away fans, it'll be nice to have people there. As you said, that's the reason you play. So we've jumped straight in here, which probably doesn't give you an opportunity to tell people your background. You just want to explain kind of what role you're in at the moment, and I guess like your journey is how you got there.
Yeah, so I suppose starting from the beginning is a good place to start. So I've been involved in rugby for a long time. Started playing rugby at a young age, and then was lucky enough to play professionally for the Ospreys. So I studied medicine for 3 years, and decided after my third year I had the opportunity to have a senior contract, of a professional contract, and decided to put my studies on hold and go down the playing route. And it worked. Got an offer of another contract, so I decided then to sort of stop my studies and put all my effort into being a rugby player. Played then for I'm trying to think how long it was. Probably took it. I got a contract in 2007, and I ended up getting injured then in 2013, which led to my retirement. But I was very fortunate at the Ospreys that I suppose built up a standing that I was already doing a little bit of coaching, and they were very kind to offer me a role within the academy. So I then went into the academy manager role. So I was managing the running of day-to-day sort of operations at academy level and managing the academy staff, while doing a bit of on-field coaching for the academy and assisting in the senior environment as well. And as I was doing that, was probably spinning a few plates. It was the managerial role, on-pitch coaching role with the academy boys, the development, and then trying to help and assist the senior team as well, and the senior coaches. And it got to the point where I was probably trying to juggle too many balls, and I needed to make a decision really which way I wanted to go down. Did I want to stay in the sort of administration side of things, or did I want to, really put my endeavours into coaching? And I thought I was young. I was pretty fresh out of the game. I had sort of the on the field feeling of that sometimes you can't have as a coach, and you don't necessarily need it, but I think that was the benefit of that time, to keep with the coaching, because I was straight from the coalface, so to speak. So I decided to park the sort of administrative duties and just almost flipped jobs with another member of staff who was in the academy, who took over the managerial roles, and I just went purely coaching. So coaching, so like head coach of the academy, and then sort of like an assistant forwards coach to the seniors then. So I did that for a season, and then the opportunity came up with Cardiff Blues then, with the forwards coach position. And I've been there now. This will be my third season with the Cardiff Blues. So that's, I suppose, a bit of a rundown of my professional rugby career to date.
Perfect. Yeah, and obviously I've done a little bit of research into your background, etc., and there's definitely some great content that we can discuss there. I guess with the Cardiff Blues at the moment, kind of a change of management, etc., for you guys. In terms of kind of in-season changes, I know at times they can be particularly difficult. I look at, in a football example, with Tottenham, they went from playing a very high press to a very low block, and from Poch to Mourinho, etc. How was that transition for you guys in terms of getting someone new coming in and having new philosophies, etc.?
It's always a bit of a disruption mid-season. No one ever wishes that on anyone, and no one ever wishes it in your team, because it does cause disruption. But it'd be a lot easier if it was a clean break at the end of seasons, I suppose. But that's the nature of professional sport. It happens. I think in terms of the on-field, the pure rugby stuff, it doesn't really change a lot because it's still been quite fresh. It's only a sort of month or so now since the head coach has left, and obviously Dai Young has now come in. It's only been a month. So in terms of rugby on pitch, like tactical changes, there probably hasn't been a lot, but it's probably maybe more around the operational sort of stuff, schedules, running of sessions and things like that, where obviously then the new head coach or head guy, he has his way that he wants the sessions to run. So it's more, I think it's more, at the moment, it's more operational. And I think that's obviously Dai coming in as well. He he knows that he can't change the world in a week. So, we're probably better off just sticking to what we're doing, or what we believe is we're good at as a team. And then I think he'll just drip some changes in over time. You can't just go from one style of play to another overnight, because you need to play to the strengths of your team, and they need consistency, to be able to perform. So yeah, I don't think there's been a lot of rugby changes, but obviously definitely putting a slant on some operational stuff. Just in terms of the difficulties of that change in middle of the season as well, is sometimes you do see a bounce back effect from teams. There's a change, and it's not necessarily the changes on the field. I think it's just it galvanizes everyone.
Would you see that around the training ground and during games?
Yeah, you make a point of it as well. You're trying to look for wins and trying to get boost motivation and trying to engender that sort of team, that team ethic. And you go through a bit of hardship, and you go, right, boys, we're under the cosh here, and we need to pull together now. So it's not, I don't think it's any surprise where there's a bit of turmoil in the club, or some changes, and you see a bounce, you see an improvement in performance, or that it's not necessarily the tactical or the technical stuff, the detail on the pitch. I think it's just everyone rallies together. It's a team sport. If everyone's rallying together and puts an extra percent in, or extra 0.5%, because of the hardship we've gone through, it improves performance. So yeah, definitely sort of galvanized us, but it's only that period that can only last so long, I suppose. It's an immediate impact, and obviously you have to try and continue that on then, and that comes through obviously the person who's in charge, putting his slant on things, I suppose.
Is there anything that you particularly liked that challenged your workings beforehand that he come in? I know it's an operational point of view, but is there anything that he does in terms of how he schedules the week or anything like that you're like, actually, that's a really good and unique way of doing it?
I think you can always just learn from change. That's the one thing that always happens in professional sport, is change. That's the one constant, is that things are always changing. So just by doing something different just makes you think in different ways. The way sessions are maybe set up just makes you think in different ways. So it's all good improvement for myself, because I suppose you just get into maybe a process of doing the same thing the same way. When someone comes in from a different club or a different background, comes in, has some different thoughts on how he wants to do it, and then you go, right, how am I going to adapt to what he wants to get out of it now? It just makes you think more, and I think that obviously just helps you improve anyway. So it's not necessarily the specifics. I think it's just the change. The change is probably the biggest thing that you can learn from, because it makes you think.
Perfect. So from a weekly schedule type of overview, what does your week entail? What does it look like? What do you do with the players in preparation for a game day, and then obviously game day itself?
So the league we play in, the Pro 14, and I suppose, well, fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you look at it, I would rather set days to play on. I'm probably a bit more of a traditionalist. I quite like Saturday afternoon rugby, every week, but that doesn't happen with us. We can play on a Friday evening. We could play all day, any time on a Saturday, any time on a Sunday. So your weekly schedules can chop and change a lot, which sometimes affects your consistency. But just as a general, say if you had a Saturday to Saturday game where there were 7 days, a general training week would be Monday, Tuesday, rest day on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, obviously play on a Saturday. In terms of what we would do in a week, then Monday would be sort of review, so reviewing the previous game, and then clarity of what we're going to do for the next game. So reviewing some, obviously your review your preview of the last game, and then this is the game plan and what we're gonna target for the next opponent. And then in terms of on pitch, it'd be very light, maybe some light skill work, possibly some game stuff just to have a little bit of flush, get the boys moving, and then it would just be sort of running through your moves, just to make sure that you get 100% clarity early in the week, so that then from then on, then you can start to add that pressure and you can start to build that performance to the next Saturday. The Tuesday would be your big volume day, where you would train obviously your clarity from the Monday, but probably would be a longer session. That's maybe where you do a little bit of extra contact work, your heavier work, so you get your volume stuff done on the Tuesday. And different teams will do it differently. We tend to do more of an attack focus on a Tuesday, and then a defensive focus maybe on a Thursday. But yeah, so that would be your Tuesday, recovery on a Wednesday. Thursday then is probably a little bit more high intensity, so shorter session, but trying to replicate game intensity. And then Friday would be captain's run or team run. And sometimes we may not even do that. So it depends on obviously the work you've got in the week, how you feel the team is going. Do you need it? Do you just change it for a change? Because again, starting to get that reaction from the players, but it's probably what they want as well. Speaking to your leaders in the team, do you feel you want a team run? Do you need to run through anything? But that would be, I'd say 99% of that would be player led. There might be a couple of little snippets at the start, just some key pointers, but majority of that would be player led. So it's probably down to them and what they feel they need. And then obviously then we play on a Saturday.
So that's an interesting thing that probably you have in rugby that maybe we don't have so much in football, in terms of having a sessions as like your captain sessions or that entire session player led. So what does that actually look like in terms of I guess that they're going to want to plan the session as a group? How does that process actually look for them? And do they have dialogue with the coaches? Is it the same things they do every week? What does that look like that Friday?
For us, that Friday looks like they go out, warm up, might play some games, get some smiles on faces, just get a little bit of energy, and then probably run a couple of defensive drills. Just some standard defensive drills, just looks at our system. And then we'd probably get into a couple of exits, so coming out of our, playing out of our half or playing out of our 22, so us getting out of our half, play a couple of exits, play a couple of kickoffs, and then it'd be handed over to the players, and it's just like, get over, your attacking plays, just and it'd probably just build from your try line up to the opposition's try line. So yeah, exits, get your kickoffs, make sure your restarts are sorted, and then just over to your attacking plays. And they wouldn't run through all of them. They might, what's the first attacking lineup we're going to run in the game? Right, sort that out. What's our play going to be once we start getting close to the 22, our close line 22 stuff? And it's just about them feeling ready and feeling confident. Generally, the defence coach will probably run the defensive drill at the start. After that, the coaches are probably stood, right back behind the posts, and the captain is running it alongside, your 9s and 10s and your key callers. So they've done it enough now that it just becomes a little bit of a pattern, I suppose. And they know what they want, they know what they need to get through, and yeah, it's pretty much over to them. If we need to coach on a Friday, we probably haven't done our job on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. So yeah, just in terms of the week, it's obviously a bit more, not all coach led at the start of the week, but a bit more coach led and just trying to taper down. And by the end of the week, you just want to pass it over to the players, really.
And so it sounds like there's quite a lot of like situational based work on the Friday, going, first line out, we're going to do this, or if the ball's in this area, we might exploit the blind side, etc. So how do the players decide on what kind of situations they're going to work through, I guess? And then also, do you see going through this that they hold each other accountable for the standards that they're keeping ready for the game the following day, if it is a Saturday, obviously?
Yes, in terms of the first part of your question, all that will be done right at the start of the week. It won't be, that's not decided, right on the Friday. That'll probably be discussed on the even prior to the Monday. There'll be, we use a fair bit of player interaction and player involvement in terms of our previews. It's not just coach led, and that would come from all the coaches, really. So it's involving them in the building of our game plan for that game. So, start of the week, you'll be having conversations with key individuals. How do you want to target them here? What's the first? So on a Monday, we'd have those callers meetings. What are you seeing? Are you seeing the same thing as I'm seeing? How do we want to target them? Right, this week, we're going to go in with this, and this. This is going to be our first one. This is going to be our stock standard play if we need to get back to, retaining a little bit of possession. So you'd have those conversations on the Monday, and then you'd hopefully you would then train that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. So by the time Friday comes and Saturday comes the game, it's almost second nature. And then in terms of keeping them accountable, yeah, we at the Blues, we probably have said that we would like some we need to try and keep developing our on-field leaders. We've got a pretty young squad, but that's hopefully through that process of those conversations on the Monday, involving them in it. That's the way we're trying to help build that on-pitch leadership. But in terms of picking up standards, yeah, the boys at times can be pretty harsh on driving those standards. And it's not necessarily around skill error. No one means to drop a ball. It's probably just, what are we doing here, boys? We said we weren't going to do that. We're going to do this. But that doesn't necessarily, by the time you get to Friday, it should be like a well-oiled machine. It doesn't. You don't necessarily get those conversations on a Friday because, again, if you do, or something goes completely wrong on a Friday and you're doing stuff that you haven't practiced all week, then we haven't done our job Monday to Thursday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Is there any particular strategies you guys use to try and develop those leaders? Because I know that's a common thread along, the sports all across the thing, is how you develop leaders, how you develop players that take accountability for themselves and for others. Have you guys got any particular ways that you do that?
We did a bit at the start of this season in terms of, off-field leadership development meetings, and we've done a little bit of that. I suppose this season has been quite difficult to get that. I suppose everyone's had difficulties doing everything this year. Everyone has more challenges and more hurdles to get over because of COVID. But yeah, it's the start of probably actually last season it would have been, some off-field leadership development sessions. But I think it's probably more the experiential sort of stuff, the day-to-day conversations, chats with people. That's where I would say we put in a lot more of our energy and resource. Those conversations with callers on a Monday. Some of the more experienced leaders then picking up with head coaches on a Monday. How do you think the game went? Are there any issues within and off-field stuff? What's going on with the squad? Any issues that we need to be aware of as coaches, or the coach has got an issue with a player, right? Boys, I need you to pick up on this for me. So just trying to do it more day to day, so learning within the job almost. And then I suppose on pitch leadership, how we develop in that. I suppose the engagement, you're hoping that the engagement that they have off the pitch leads them to have a better understanding of why they're doing things, so that when they get on the pitch, then they know why we're doing it. So if a picture changes, then they can hopefully adapt quicker, rather than just a message coming on from the coach. And then I suppose certain things in training that we're trying to help them be better to adapt, I suppose, is just throwing scenarios at them, especially in that Thursday session where we want to try and replicate game intensity. That's probably where we would then, throw some scenarios at them. They know the perfect game plan that we've tried to implement or tried to get in from a Monday, but then there may be some curveballs thrown in on a Thursday. Some examples of that might be, yellow card scenario. So and so is yellow carded. What are we going to do now? Or this is the score line. This is what the time on the clock is. This is where we are in the field. Off you go. What do you do? And then obviously you're just trying to replicate that game, and hopefully the leaders on the pitch then, they'll make the decisions. But hopefully by doing that in training, they'll be quicker to do it in the game on the Saturday then.
How, in that case, how important is it for kind of the captain and the coaching staff, etc., to have alignment? Because I'd imagine if they are making those types of decisions on the field of play, they need to be the ones that the coaching staff are on board with. Otherwise, you get in at half time and go, why have you made that decision, or why have you done that? So how important is there kind of alignment of philosophy or vision between coaches and the senior leaders?
Oh, I think it's massively important. And again, it comes from probably those meetings before the meetings, the one-to-one conversations that you have maybe over a weekend, or you have early in the week on a Monday, just to make sure that your leaders in each area, the guys who are running those areas, are on the same page, or you come to the same page. You might be on slightly different pages, have different views on different things, how we want to try and exploit teams, but then we have to come together and form a clear plan that everyone's on the same page at, because like you said, you can't have your coach wanting one thing and your player who's on the pitch wanting something else, and then it obviously wires across, and that's where your performance slips down. So that comes from the effort that put in at the start of the week, I suppose. And that's why player engagement, I suppose, is so important. You can't just dictate to players these days. This is what I want you to do. Players have to feel responsible for it. And I think if they feel responsible for it, then you're clear with your plan, then they'll implement it, because they want it to achieve, they want it to work, they want it to be successful, because they're part of that process.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. I think that's something that's becoming more and more commonplace across sports, is that the players have to feel like they're part of the plan. Maybe years gone by you could just dictate, which I don't think you can as much anymore. In terms of the Thursday sessions for you guys, which is obviously kind of a map replication. What would that look like from start to finish? So in terms of timing wise, in terms of sets and reps, etc., what would that look like? And is there any particular distances and stuff or contacts you're trying to hit during that session? Or
probably this is one of the areas that maybe has changed with the changing head coach with us now. Dai's come in and he's got a framework that he's used in the past, I think, and likes for that Thursday session. So that's probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen, is just that the not necessarily the content, but the structure of that session. It's similar to what we used to do before, but just a couple of little different tweaks. So in terms of the makeup of the session, we'd want to keep it to probably 50 minutes. 50 minutes max, because we want it to be high intensity. You can't be high intensity if you're going on for an hour and a half. So Thursday would be just one rugby session, really. So we'd have a unit block, so like a forwards back split at the start of the session. That would probably run for 20 minutes, and then 20-25 minutes, depending on obviously how we feel we've gone in the week, what we need to work on, new combinations. But yeah, 20-25 minutes of units, and then it'd probably be 20-25 minutes of team, or maybe a little bit longer, maybe half an hour team block at the end. The unit stuff for the start, in terms of forward content, it would probably be running obviously all the clarity that we've got from the start of the week in terms of our line out and scrum attack, getting that, but doing it a bit more randomized and a bit more game realistic. So putting them in different scenarios, different areas of the pitch, and trying to randomize it. But we would have a more of a defensive focus as well. So we'd probably prioritize our attack start of the week and then our defense towards the back end of the week. So it just interspersing our attack with some defense, just to make sure that we got our systems in place. And in terms of the team session, we'd probably run a couple of drills to start off with, just some attack and defense focus drills, just to make sure we're on the money. And then the bulk of that session, probably 15-20 minutes, would be for what Dai's wanted, is more of a performance session. So again, match replication, really. So just almost playing 15v15, and it wouldn't be contact. We always try and just go grab, just to make sure the speed of ball is realistic to a game. But it wouldn't be like 15-20 minutes of live contact. It may be a little block at the end where there'd be a couple of minutes just of some live stuff, just to give us a bit of a spike. But that would probably be if we felt we needed it. Wouldn't necessarily be every week. But within that block, yeah, it would be just trying to replicate the match as closely as you can. So run a kick-off. If they kick out, what's our first line out of the game? Run the line out. And then you may just sort of, you may manage it a little bit so that you know what you want to get out. You want to get maybe 3 or 4 attack sets, a couple of 3 or 4 defensive sets, and where they want to be on the field. And you would just manage that session then accordingly. But you're trying to keep it as close to game as possible. And then you may just drop in a couple of scenarios at the back end to try and hopefully develop that on-field leadership and, develop those leaders to be able to be adaptable in game situations.
It's interesting what you said there regarding the contact. So throughout the week, is it very minimal contact that you'll do with the players?
Yeah, it's every rugby session we go, we're not doing live contact every session. You can't do it these days. With how physical the game is, the boys play on a Saturday, they're still going to be banged up they're still going to be banged up on a Tuesday. So it's managing where it is in the season, managing what you think you need, what you have covered, what you haven't covered over the last couple of weeks, and I suppose it's just dropping it in. Forwards specific stuff, I think we need to, it's little and often. So we're not going to spend an hour doing driving lineouts and live scrums. So we try and prioritize doing more of our live stuff front of the week so that they can recover and they're nice and fresh for the game. Again, little and often it's we'd hit a couple of live scrums like maybe 4 or 5 live scrums on a Tuesday, alongside 4 or 5 live driving lineouts, and then it'd probably be on the Thursday would be maybe it's just getting into spaces, just to the bump and then not really to completion. So just making sure that you're in your right spaces on the Thursday. In terms of the team element, it'll depend what we've covered off. If we haven't covered off a lot of goal line defence for a couple of weeks, then the defence coach might want to go, right, I want 2 2-minute bouts of live goal line defence at the end of that performance session, or at the back end of the Thursday. It'll all be based on obviously what the medics tell us, in terms of who's fit and who's available, because you can't risk banging anyone up and them not being available for the match. And also what the players feel as well. You get a sense, there's monitoring going on daily. You get the reports of how they're feeling, and if they're all coming back and they feel banged up and knackered, we're not going to get anything out of doing live stuff. So it's very much a suck it and see. It's feeling where we are in the season. What have we covered? Haven't we covered over the last couple of weeks? And then reacting to what the players are feeling as well, and how their bodies are acting. So, you're talking in terms of a normal week, you're probably looking at single figure minutes of contact element, a week. Less than that, you're probably looking at maybe 5 to 6 minutes of contact a week.
I guess this is a challenge situation, because the reason you guys do it is obviously to protect the players and protect physically. Do you think it has a negative effect on the players that, like, during games when they're trying to tackle, etc.? Because I'd imagine, 20 years ago, where you're able to do contact every session, although players might have been getting beaten up a little bit more, the repetition of that contact allows them more opportunities to practice a particular type of tackle.
Well, when I say that's probably in structured sessions. Forwards units we're going to be doing more contact in the backs, because it's more in scrum. We can't get away from that. But in terms of then live in team sessions, where it's literally like game replication live. It's like body on body, full tilt. We did a session a couple of weeks back where we're talking each team had like 2 2-minute bouts of contact, defense and attack, and that's the most contact we've done for weeks, and because we didn't have a game. We did it because we didn't have a game, and so they've done 8 minutes of live contact, 4 minutes of attack and 4 minutes of defense. And that's the most contact that we've done in weeks. I mean, you're talking 8 minutes. But in terms of your preparation for contact in games, boys do extras after sessions, and that will probably be where then they get those contacts, but it's not full body on body. It's like with shields or technical body on body, so that they get enough repetition so that when they come to the game, they're prepared. I suppose the difficult thing for people being prepared is, especially this season, is the level of rugby underneath the pro game has obviously gone. So say, for example, boys who are sort of, and not necessarily, or younger boys who are not necessarily broken into that first team yet, but are in the squad, but are not playing week to week, and not getting any games outside of that at a lower level. If one of those boys then drops out of the first team and then they're asked to then move up, I suppose it's how prepared are they? And I suppose it's us and them keeping on top of their extras and making sure that their game replacement sessions are as trying to be as as close to playing a game as possible, but it's hard to replicate a game in training. And it's a difficult world at the moment. I think that's the biggest thing of COVID at the moment is having a massive impact on the younger players' development.
And so, is there any particular strategies you guys have used to help those younger players? Because, like you said, I think it's something, not just in rugby and football, in all sports, the younger players, it's challenging for them when they're trying to make that jump into the first team environment. Is there anything you guys have done to try and support them in that transition?
Yeah, nothing can replicate the game. So, hopefully we can get back to getting some form of rugby underneath that first tier. And that's, that would be the most important thing. In terms of what we've tried to arrange some fixtures. So we had a friendly fixture last week that enabled a couple of the younger boys to play, and I think it was really good. But you could see, coming to after the first half, boys who haven't played, starting to tire after like 45, 50 minutes, which is natural because you can do all the training in the world. It's different from playing a game. But yeah, trying to organise maybe some of those fixtures with other pro teams, because they'll have they'll have big squads. But obviously it's being able to get them sanctioned, with all the protocols that you have to adhere to with COVID restrictions. But then in training, I suppose it's just making sure that those boys keep on top of their contact extras or their extra, whatever their development points are in their development plans, is making sure that they pick up on those extras, after sessions. If they're not playing on a Saturday, then there'll be a session that's run, like a match replacement session, where hopefully the content of that, depending on the numbers that you've got available to you, hopefully the content of that will try and put them in those positions where they've, won through fitness, playing games, maybe just doing some running, but getting those contacts as well. So when they've, obviously after that session, they feel as if they've not necessarily played a game, but, as close to a game as possible so that they can keep on top of things. So, so if someone drops out, well, one, for their development, but if someone, in terms of performance at the top level, someone drops out, the next one's ready to go.
Yeah. So in terms of for you, you've mentioned a lot around kind of the review process and how that then informs your thinking and whatnot. So what does that review process kind of, I guess, after a game on the Monday and stuff entail? Is there any particular metrics that you use? What does that review process look like for you guys?
So the analysts will put together like a stats report of the game, and we'll share that with the coaches. The players are pretty interested in it as well, so they share it with some of the players and they'll have a look. But that'll just be sent out for information if people want to look into it. In terms of review process within training and presenting the players, we've used different formats to change things up, create different stimulus, and a lot of it will depend on the length of the week as well. If you've got a longer week, you can probably go through a bit more of a formal review process, and then we're previewing. If you've got a short turnaround, you need to turn that around quite quickly. So in terms of a normal week, like a 7-day turnaround, on a Monday, we'd have a split unit block. So we'd have a unit review. So forwards and backs can review their stuff. And then in terms of team review, again, we've done it in different ways. Different things we've done is, you just have a standard attack and defence review, or we've done sort of quite rotational meetings, so quite short meetings. So you might have the defence coach running a defence review, attack coach running an attack review, and then maybe one other area, and splitting the group into 3 groups, and then literally 6 minutes on each station, and just quickly drop around. So just the key points from the week, do that, and then probably would we then move to preview later in the day. It's just not to try and give them too much information in one hit, so that they can retain that info. In terms of shorter weeks, where you need to turn things around quite quickly, we use a lot of sort of like screen record reviews, voiceovers from coaches, and then send that out through. The simplest way that we found is just send it out through WhatsApp. Seems to work okay for us. The one downside to that, I suppose, is you lose the player engagement, because you're sending something out, you don't get any feedback back. But I suppose then the skill of the coach then is to check when we get together, is to check that understanding and then get that engagement after you've sent the stuff out, and it works quite well. I think that pre-meeting material, so you still might have a meeting, but you've sent the stuff out beforehand. It gives them a chance to have a look at it themselves, and then when they come to the meeting, they're not seeing it for the first time, so hopefully they've been able to form more of an opinion on it, or watch it themselves, understand it, and then I suppose the skill of the coaching is the questioning, the skill of the question. So not just checking that they've listened to it, is making sure that they understand it, and then checking for that deeper knowledge within that area. So ask the follow-up question after the first one. So yeah, different tools for different weeks. But yeah, just found us generally with some of the forward stuff, that pre-meeting material being quite good actually.
Yeah, I think particularly with COVID at the moment, it's a good way of still getting the content to the players, but obviously you can't have meeting rooms with loads of people in, so it's quite a good way of getting them the opportunity to see that.
Yeah, so obviously dealing with those issues, that's why we've kept the meetings pretty short, smaller groups, spread out. So it's just in and out. It's rotate around quite quickly. Smaller groups, so there's not as much contact. Yeah.
So in terms of the review details that you're going through, is that relative to the plan that you had in place for the previous week, or is it things that have come up during the game that they've done particularly well or particularly struggled on? Is it like unit challenges that you've set for the backs or the forwards? What does that look like?
Probably a little bit of everything there. At times I'm picking the right ones for the right weeks. I think you always need to review your preview. So this is what we went into the game trying to do. Did we do it? If so, why? If not, why didn't we achieve our outcome? So I always think you need to review your preview, because there's a clear focus there, and then other stuff. It'd probably just be, if there's anything that needs to pick up on your on your general process, if you've got a certain way of doing something and there's a good example of it, or maybe something that was bad that didn't work in your system, so you're just reviewing your system and your processes, then obviously you need to pick that up as well, because it's that continual driving of your processes, of your systems, that obviously hopefully will pass over to your performance outcome. On that, I found so we're, as coaches, we're like naturally we're looking for error, but just to change that mindset, I found looking the other way probably better, has had a better carry over to the players, is highlighting positive reinforcement of what your systems and what your processes are. I found that works better than picking up on error, like being an error detector.
Why do you think that? Why do you say that?
I think just the performance improvement in what I've seen by you trying to change my mindset rather than being an error detector, pick up on the good and show that just reinforces good practice, and just the output I've seen from that then has been more powerful than being of necessarily doing the other way, which I would have been a couple of years ago. I just think that reinforcement of good practice, you showing them what you want as well. So it probably helps in their understanding. Rather than showing them, don't do this, I want you to do this. Just show them what you want, and it's easier to see. It's easier to see, and it's easier to replicate.
Easier to see the outcome when there's a good outcome, a good example of the outcome there, rather than having to visualize it.
So if you're looking for a certain technique or a certain skill, then again, people learn in different ways. If I'm telling someone I think you need to be, and I'm just talking verbally to them, you're doing it wrong in this instance. You need to be here, or your shoulder needs to be here, for example. Are they understanding my words? Because if I show them a picture and just go, this is what, this is excellent work, then everyone goes, right, all I need to do is just replicate that. Whether that's a simpler way of trying to convey the information to the players.
Why have you had that transition? So why have you had the realization that actually going around and highlighting the bad bits of play maybe isn't as effective as showing people the positive things that have been done or they've done?
Obviously, that's just a continual development of myself as a coach, I suppose. We go through, we have support networks that we speak to, and I suppose you pick up on things from different people, and you try it. Someone says, "Oh, have you thought about this?" You try it. It seems to work, and then you sort of go down a different path. Then, so I suppose it's just my continual development for me. I've made loads of mistakes, and it's accepting that, and then obviously learning from it, and just trying to do things better every time.
One of the things that kind of fascinates me, rugby generically, is how different, I guess, the players are and how different the skill sets are for those players. I know from speaking to people on this podcast before, they say rugby is everybody's game. It doesn't matter what you look like, how you are physically. There's a position on the pitch and stuff you'll be able to play. How challenging is that for you as a forwards coach? Obviously, you could have your props and your hooker who might be really strong and might be slightly less mobile than someone like Michael Hooper, the flanker for Australia. He's really quick and agile, etc. How different is it, or how difficult is it for you to manage those people and understand their individual skill set and how that you can use that in the pack?
Well, that's I suppose that's it's very positional specific. Your props are your bigger lumps because they're your foundation of your scrum, and they're the ones who are doing the pushing. Your second rows are your tall guys because they're the ones winning the ball in the line out. Your back rowers are your fast ones because they're more mobile, so they can get to the breakdowns. It's positional, and that's where you get into, I suppose, as you develop as a player when you're younger, and it's not pigeonholing people just because of what they look like and their body shape into those positions. But I suppose your physical makeup is gonna endear you to a certain position because you're going to be more effective in that position, and you're going to become a better player. Probably generalizing, but someone who's 6'10" and is more likely to be an effective second row than they are an open side flanker. They're going to be going to be times where that doesn't necessarily ring true, but the majority of the time, he's going to be better suited to that because of his physical stature, and because of what you want to get out of that player in that position. In terms of managing their individual skill sets, then it's using them where they're best suited. So say if you're playing an attacking style of game, then close to the line, you probably want your props to carry because you're stronger, heavier, more physical individuals. Further out, where you might be looking to play a bit more of a ball handling game, you're probably going to want to have your back rowers on the ball. So it's using them where they're best suited as well.
Is it important that you profile players coming into the club that fit kind of what your team's philosophy is as well? Because imagine, for example, if you did have an open side flanker, one that's really, really mobile, can get around the pitch really, really well, and the other that maybe isn't so mobile but is great in contact and physically can tackle better. I imagine from a game plan point of view, it could be really challenging if one gets injured or one suspended for a certain fixture. So is it important that you profile players that kind of have similar-ish skill sets so that it doesn't ruin the team dynamic when you go from game to game?
I think 100%. Like, you have to recruit on what your game model is. If you want to be playing a fast and open game, you'll recruit fast and skillful players. If you want to play a more set piece orientated game, collision dominance, maybe forward related, then you have to recruit on what you think is going to make you successful in that area. There's no point just recruiting people so willy-nilly. You have to be reasons why and what that's going to offer to your team to make your team better. You'll have an idea, the head coach will have an idea of how he wants to play the game, and then all the effort in recruitment has to go into guys who suit your game model.
And how much say would you have in that as a forwards coach? How much say or assistance would you give in going, I've seen this player whose contract's up in the summer, or how much help and guidance do you have in terms of those players that are coming in?
I think the way it would work would be, we're as coaches on the ground, we're not privy to the conversations that go on in the boardrooms of who's available, who's not available, how much money's, in terms of salaries and things like that. But there'll be discussions of what we need. What do we need to make our team better? What positions are we light in? Where do we feel we need to recruit? And then I suppose names will be passed across people's desks of who are out of contract. And then it's about us probably doing the due diligence then on them. So looking at the footage, and then as coaches, us going, this guy's available, this guy's available, this guy's available. Well, player one suits our game best, so we'd like to go for him. And then it's giving that information back to whoever's doing the recruitment and dealing with the contracting, and them making the decisions based on obviously the finances and obviously the feedback from the coaches then. So our involvement as coaches will probably be the due diligence part, watching this stuff and seeing who fits our team best, and as coaches who we think is the best player to recruit, pass that information back to the guy who's managing the recruitment, and then it's up to them then to take it to the next stage, I suppose.
And beyond watching footage of them, what due diligence can you do? Because I imagine it can be quite challenging in terms of to get loads of background on the player or anything like that.
So it's not just, I was going to say, it's not just the on-field stuff. It's not just their playing capabilities. They have to fit in off the pitch as well. And this would just be my take on it. Personally, you always want to look at their character as well. They have to be able to fit into the team dynamic. Otherwise, you could have the most skillful player But if he comes in and he doesn't fit into your group dynamic, he can probably cause more problems than he can solve. So yeah, it would be, I suppose, reaching out to your network of contacts within the rugby world. Rugby is a pretty, close-knit game. You'll have people who move on to different clubs, and it's about then asking those questions and putting your feelers out there to your contacts, just to get a bit of information of what guys are like off the pitch, more so than on the pitch, I think. What type of person are they? What leadership qualities are they going to bring to us? Are they good? Are they easy to get on with? Just some stuff around the character.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting side of the game, but in all sports, I think it's something that's probably going to continue to grow, because the ability for players to settle in an area and then settle into a group, I agree with you. I'd say is probably more important than actually what they can do on the field.
Yeah, definitely.
Particularly if you're going from players from abroad, for example, if you're getting someone from France or Italy, I'd imagine coming over here where it it's never sunny or whatnot, and there's maybe not the best food, like pastas and stuff, could be a bit of a challenging situation for them. So
yeah, and I suppose language as well, isn't it? Can they speak the language? So what's your support like for people who maybe English is not their first language? It's everything, isn't it? Because the life off the pitch and the group dynamic off the pitch is going to have a massive impact on your performance on it. So you need to make sure that you get that right, because however talented you are, if you can't play together with the other 14 blokes who are on the field, then you're not going to get the best out of the team.
So one thing I think is interesting, obviously, in your role, there's quite a diverse set of skills that you're going to have in terms of management and technical and tactical detail. When you were making that transition from a player into a coach, I know obviously you mentioned before was enforced. Is there anything that you look back now and wish you'd spent more time on to improve that skill set?
I think when I started, like, the pros of coming out of straight out of playing to coaching, obviously that you're current, you've done the work that you're asking the players to do, so your technical knowledge, I suppose, is pretty current. But as I'm developing as a coach, it's not that part of the game. I don't think that you need to necessarily concentrate on too much, because players will always have more technical knowledge than I will as a coach. They'll always know how to get out of a situation more than I will, because they're in it every day. I just need to put them in situations then that help them practice that. So I just need to put them into situations that are going to help them adapt and help them make them teach themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's probably where when I came out of playing, I went straight into majority of my work was probably development coaching, and development of like academy players. So it probably suited quite well, because they haven't necessarily had the playing experience to know the technical detail. But obviously, when working with senior players who are senior professionals, they know all the technical details. You can pick them up and you can critique them here and there, but it's just about putting them in situations where they can teach themselves a little bit. So back to your question, I suppose, what areas would I have developed in myself a little bit earlier? That concentration on technical aspects worked for me, I suppose, because I was a development coach, and the players I was coaching didn't necessarily have the experience that I had as a player at that point in their development. But in terms of my development in myself, would probably have been, rather than just concentrating on the technical, because that's where my strength was at the time, was probably more of the like the off-field stuff, the the leadership, the man management types, that area of coaching, and building relationships with players. That's probably where I would have put more energy into my development.
Yeah, I think it's always an interesting point when you're making that transition, and everyone has a different skill set. You have some coaches that are really good on the technical detail, like you alluded to there. Others, maybe that's the technique and tactical side is the bit that they need to work on, and how courses are now beginning to incorporate all different aspects of that. So linking now kind of into your playing journey, obviously you mentioned that you played for the Ospreys for a number of years. I guess the first and easiest question is, what was it like when you made your debut? Do you remember it? And how was that feeling for you and your family?
It's a long time ago now. I was actually in my third year of medical studies, and it was coming to the end of a season, and I can't remember 100% remember, but I'm not sure whether the Ospreys they had maybe I might have had a few bodies out of the squad, or people away with international duties. I can't really remember what it was. But I was in the Ospreys Academy, and I was up in Cardiff studying medicine, and got asked if I could go in and train with the first team for a couple of weeks. So obviously I jumped at the chance and went in and trained, and then managed to play 2 games at the back end of that season. So I was still in full-time studies, and I obviously just got called up from the academy to go and train with the seniors to try and fill some spaces. And I think I made my debut against, I'm trying to remember back now, again, like I said, long time ago. I think it was end of the 2006-2007 season. I think it was against Connaught at home on the Liberty Stadium. I was on the bench and came off the bench, but I can't necessarily remember my feelings and emotions at the time, but I do remember the enjoyment of going in and training with the first team. That end of that season was good. It was a step up for me, one that got me really excited to try and kick on. And then my second game, so that 2 games at the back end of that season, Connaught at home and then Edinburgh away. And the Edinburgh away one was a good experience as well, because I ended up rooming with Philo Tia, who is an Ospreys legend, and it was really good to build that relationship with Philo. And he sort of took me a little bit under his wing, and we still stay in contact today. And he did a lot for me in my development as a player. But yeah, that's probably that memory of grooming with him in Edinburgh then.
Like what? How did he help you? What did he help you with?
He was just really good at giving up his time. Both on the pitch after sessions, doing some extras, in the analysis room, going through match footage, and just putting an arm around really, and just being there to talk to, and just taking an interest, I think, is the biggest thing. He made an effort to take an interest and to put time into me, and obviously very grateful for that. As there's a number of the senior players there, but he's definitely one that would stick out in my mind.
And do you think for you early on that highlighted the importance of having the right leaders in a group? Because I imagine if that had been the other way around, where he wasn't a great leader and you're sharing a room with him, that could have been a very different experience for you as a younger player coming into that environment.
Oh, 100%. Just how welcome I was made to feel, and didn't feel nervous. It was straight in, and it was made to feel welcome. Didn't add any extra pressure onto me. I'm again, I can't really remember because it's a long time ago. But yeah, of course, I would have probably been nervous before those games, nervous making that step up into the senior squad. You know, that fear of failure and question whether I was good enough to make the step up. But if you're made to feel comfortable, it takes a little bit of that pressure away because you're all fighting for the same cause. You're on the same team. It just makes you feel as if everyone wants you to achieve. So it just helps take a little bit of pressure off you.
And then in terms of highlights for your time as an Osprey, as a player, what would you say is the one or two things that really stood out for you as particular highlights during your playing career?
I was very fortunate to play age grade rugby for Wales. You know, sort of come through the age grade ranks and play for the under 19s and the 21s and captain my country. You know, that's obviously got to be a real positive for me. In terms of in an Ospreys jersey, it's the big one would be when we won the league. I'm trying to think when it was. I think it was the 2011-12 season. So we won the league in the grand final out in Leinster against Leinster. So that's a big one, and I enjoyed that season. I ended up captaining the team for large periods of that season, while the internationals are away, for Six Nations and autumn internationals and the like. So I felt I had a big part in getting us to that point. It was a bit sort of double-edged sword, really, because obviously massive achievement to win the final out in Leinster, but I was on the bench and I didn't get on. I played up to that point. I played in every game of the league, so it would have been, it would be nice to have played every game and then played in the final as well, but didn't manage to get on. But it was a great achievement, great day. It was perfect, really. It was a lovely day. Sun was out, crowds in the stadium, banging crowd. And my family, my dad came over with my wife and her parents, and it was just a really good experience. We had a good celebration in the night after. But then there's like a lot of highs then came just around spending time with mates. You get so close to people playing with each other, and it was large periods of it were like going away to the old Ravenhill, Ulster, while the Six Nations are on. So you've got, your squad is your core players are playing, your internationals are away, and you go out to places like that, and then you come away with a win. And it's just those little small moments. It's not necessarily just the championships. I was lucky to be in two squads that we won the Pro 12 twice. But it's probably the little memories, the little small moments of just wins away on the road, spending good time in the change room with your mates and the other players. So very fond memories of my playing days there.
And then something that intrigues me, and I think it'd be a good question, is what do you think separates kind of the very top players to obviously all the very good ones that you play with? I looked through when I was researching some of the players. It said you played with people like Shane Williams, Alun Jones, Tommy Bowe, etc. I mean, they're household names for people that maybe don't even follow rugby necessarily. So what do you think it is that makes those type of people and type of players really stand out?
It's a good question, because if everyone knew that, you could bottle it and you could definitely sell it, couldn't you? But I think twofold, really. Physical ability, I think, is massive. Like you can't you can't be an international second row if you're 5'11". Like, you just can't do it. So you have to be a certain physical stature to play professional sport, and you have to have certain physical capabilities to excel in certain positions. And I think that helps massively. Saying that, just having those physical attributes and physical capabilities doesn't necessarily mean that then you're gonna get to the next level. So I think you have to be over a threshold of what your physical capabilities are, so that then the work and then the second point is probably how hard you work at your craft to then reach your ceiling, which probably is your physical capabilities. And someone like you mentioned there, so say Alun Jones, like, he's the same age as me. There's no way I could be playing rugby now, and he's going and he's still putting in performances like he is, today. But it's no surprise, because how hard he works, so his diligence off the field, how well he maintains his body, his extras, and just his work ethic is a second to none. And I just think it's that sort of that drive and that desire. Like, literally nothing will stop you. So twofold really. I think it's just your physical capabilities will allow you to get there, but then I suppose it's how hard you work and you're willing to work to reach your potential.
And do you think that that's something that message is getting to younger players better? Do you think that, the ones that are coming through academies, etc., you're saying it's not enough just to have those physical characteristics? It's not enough just to be really skillful. Actually, you need to take care of your body. You need to take care of your mind. You need to do your due diligence. You need to do your extras. Do you think that's a message that's being spread out a lot better?
Yeah, I think so. I'll come back to probably one thing that I'm now thinking that I've missed, but I think players now see it's a route to profession, isn't it? Like, when I was coming through initially, you didn't necessarily grow up wanting to be a pro rugby player. It just sort of happened by you played rugby, you enjoyed it, and then you became, you were good enough to move to the next step, and you sort of built your way up. Whereas now it's definitely it's almost, it can be a career choice, and I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, mind. But it's a career choice, so people will put more effort into achieving it and striving for it. You look at some boys now and how hard they work on their extras in the gym, and everything's moving on a step. Obviously as the professional game evolves, but people are definitely working as hard, if not harder, than maybe back when I was coming through. And I think that's due to the opportunities that they can achieve within the game. Then I suppose it's the mental side of it as well. I failed to mention that, what makes a difference in players. It comes down sometimes just to the top 2 inches. So your rugby intellect, are you a smart rugby player? Can you think, and can you adapt, and can you operate at that speed that requires you to be an international or a British Lion, the top end of the game? But also the resilience as well. Rugby's a tough game. You're going to get knocks, you're going to get setbacks. It's how you deal with that, and how you keep obviously pushing forward and accepting mistakes or accepting those hardships, but keep moving forward. And that's probably the one thing that I've seen a little bit of a difference in terms of some of the younger players now, is maybe they don't have as many hardships as they're developing because a lot is provided for them, is how well they can cope then with when things don't necessarily come their way easily. And it's them accepting that it's not going to be easy. You have to go through the hardships to make you that better player. It's you're not entitled to anything. You have to work hard to achieve it yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think resilience, both as a life skill and in sport, is crucial. There's going to be good and bad days, and the ability to, get over those and as you said, keep moving forward is crucial, really. Listen, I'm conscious we're closely approaching the time we set out for, so I'm going to ask you one last question, which is something I ask everyone, which is, who's the best player or coach you've worked with or against, and why?
Very good question. Player, like you said, it was very lucky to play with a lot of household names and a lot of talented individuals within the Ospreys. You know, in my time as a player there, you know, everyone knows the names. You know, Shane Williams, Tommy Bowe, you know, James Hook. There are too many to name. Do you know what I mean? But just for me personally, guys who probably had a massive impact on me were the Kiwis in the team. So like, and especially my position, like Marty Holler, Philo Tia, like not necessarily, they were really good players. You know, they don't become All Blacks for nothing, but it's what they were as people as well. So it's not just necessarily what they were as players, but what they did for me, and just really good blokes. So I can't thank them enough for what they've done for my rugby development. So there's two guys who, you know, I would hold in really high esteem. And then coach-wise, a lot of my time as a player was spent under Jonathan Humphreys, and a lot of my philosophies would come from him. So I obviously have got him to thank for that. In terms of then just style of coaching and coaching his philosophies, Brad Davis I thought was excellent, who was a defence coach at the Ospreys. So I just thought the way he coached his principles and coached his philosophies, he was everything was about process, coaching his principles and philosophies, and then just that player. His delivery style was excellent. I thought his delivery style was excellent. And then just in terms of managing players, and a good friend of mine, Steve Tandy, I thought was really good at the Ospreys when he took over. You know, a young coach going in, and he probably didn't see a lot of what he did off the field, but I think his relationships that he built with players was excellent. So there's a lot to be learned from that as well.
Perfect, Tom. Listen, I really appreciate your time, and obviously hope you and your family stay safe, and hopefully Cardiff get a few more wins this season.
Fingers crossed.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.